In a quiet savanna park, a young woman battling cancer suddenly collapsed beneath an oak tree, her paintings scattered around her. A stranger rushed over, lifted her up, and frantically called for help. At the hospital, the doctor said she only had a few days left without immediate treatment, but the cost was far beyond her reach. What no one knew was that this stranger had been looking for her on purpose, and what he did next would break your heart. Before we continue, tell us what time it is and where you're watching from. Subscribe and hype, because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. The world tilted sideways before Emily Carter even realized she was falling. One moment she was folding her table under the ancient oak in Forsyth Park, her paintings stacked carefully in their worn canvas bag. The next, her knees buckled and the ground rushed up to meet her. The canvas bag slipped from her fingers, scattering paintings across the damp grass. The sky above was heavy with gray clouds, November wind cutting through her thin jacket. She tried to push herself up, but her arms had no strength. Her vision blurred at the edges, darkness creeping in like watercolor bleeding across wet paper. Miss, can you hear me?" A man's voice, urgent and close. Emily felt hands on her shoulders, strong but gentle, keeping her from collapsing completely. "I'm okay," she tried to say, but the words came out slurred, wrong. Nothing worked the way it should. Her body had become a stranger. "You're not okay, stay still, I'm calling for help." Through the fog in her head, Emily caught glimpses of him. An older man, maybe late 60s, silver hair, eyes that held something she couldn't quite name. Concern, yes, but something deeper, recognition, maybe. Or memory. She heard him speaking rapidly into a phone. "Yes, Forsyth Park, near the fountain. A young woman collapsed, unresponsive. Please hurry." Emily wanted to protest, to tell him she couldn't afford an ambulance, couldn't afford any of this, but the darkness was pulling harder now, and she was so tired of fighting it. The last thing she remembered before consciousness slipped away was his voice, low and steady. "You're going to be all right, I've got you." When Emily opened her eyes, fluorescent lights burned overhead. The antiseptic smell of hospital hit her immediately, that particular combination of bleach and illness and desperation that she'd come to know too well. A monitor beeped beside her bed, an IV line snaked into her arm. Her mouth tasted like metal and fear. "Welcome back." A doctor stood at the foot of her bed, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and tired features. "I'm Dr. Patel. You gave us quite a scare." Emily tried to sit up, but Dr. Patel raised a hand. "Easy. Your blood pressure crashed when you came in. We've stabilized you, but I need you to stay still while we run some tests." "I can't afford this," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't have insurance that covers. That's already been taken care of." Dr. Patel said gently. "The gentleman who brought you in covered the emergency admission." "What gentleman?" "He's in the waiting room. He insisted on staying until you woke up." Dr. Patel checked something on her tablet. "Emily, when was your last treatment for the AML?" Emily's chest tightened. 3 weeks ago. But I had to stop because I couldn't afford to continue." Dr. Patel's expression shifted, professional concern giving way to something more human. "Your white blood cell count is dangerously low. The leukemia is progressing rapidly. Without immediate intervention, we're looking at a critical situation within days, not weeks." The words should have terrified her. Instead, Emily just felt numb. She'd known this was coming, had felt it in the way exhaustion clung to her bones, the way bruises appeared without cause, the way each breath required a conscious decision to keep going. "How long?" Emily asked. "Let's not talk in those terms yet," Dr. Patel said, but her eyes told the truth. Not long at all. After the doctor left, Emily lay there listening to the monitor count out her heartbeats, each beep a reminder that she was still here, still fighting, still losing. A soft knock at the door made her turn her head. The man from the park stood in the doorway, his expensive suit somehow looking rumpled despite its obvious quality. He held a paper cup of coffee, though he didn't seem to be drinking it, just holding it like he needed something for his hands to do. "You're awake," he said, relief evident in his voice. "You brought me here." It wasn't a question. "I did." He stepped into the room but kept his distance, hovering near the foot of the bed. "I'm William Donovan." Emily studied him. There was something familiar about him, though she was certain they'd never met. Something in the way he looked at her, like he was seeing someone else. Someone he'd lost. Why? Emily asked. Why would you help a stranger like me? William was quiet for a long moment. His grip tightened on the coffee cup, and Emily saw his jaw work as if he was trying to find the right words. Because 3 years ago, he began, his voice rough with something that might have been grief, I watched my wife die in a hospital room very much like this one, and I promised her I wouldn't let that happen to someone else if I had the power to stop it. Emily felt tears prick her eyes. You don't even know me. No, William agreed, but I know what it looks like when someone is fighting for their life. I know what it costs, and I know what it means to be too late. He finally looked directly at her, and Emily saw the weight he carried. I wasn't too late this time. I don't understand. Why me? There are thousands of people who need help. William set down the coffee cup and pulled something from his jacket pocket. A folded magazine article. He opened it carefully, almost reverently, and Emily recognized Grace's piece about her from Southern Living. I saw this 2 weeks ago, William said. I saw your paintings. I read your story, and I saw my wife in every brushstroke. His voice cracked slightly. She was a painter too, she fought cancer too, and she lost. Emily's heart ached for this stranger who had somehow become her savior. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just let me help. William folded the article and tucked it away. The doctor says you need immediate treatment. Aggressive chemotherapy, possibly a stem cell transplant. I want to cover the costs. All of them. Emily couldn't even process the magnitude of what he was offering. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's money I have and don't need, William said simply. Money my wife and I made together, money she would have wanted used exactly this way. He moved closer, his expression intense. Emily, before you say no, before you tell me you can't accept this, I need you to understand something. Helping you isn't charity. It's the last promise I made to Eleanor, before she died. It's me finally keeping my word. Emily opened her mouth to respond, to ask more questions, to understand how a stranger could appear in her darkest moment and offer salvation. But William raised his hand gently. You don't have to decide right now, he said, but I need to know one thing. If money wasn't an issue, if you could afford treatment, would you fight? Would you choose to live? Emily thought about her paintings still scattered in Forsyth Park. About Grace's kindness and Mr. Jameson's gumbo. About the light on River Street at dawn that she'd never quite captured perfectly. About all the canvases still blank, all the beauty still unseen. Yes, she whispered. I would fight. William nodded slowly, something like relief flooding his features. Then that's all I need to hear. He turned to leave, but Emily called out. William, how did we get here? I mean, how did you happen to be in the park when I collapsed? William paused at the door, his back to her. When he spoke his voice was distant, pulled back into memory. That's a longer story, he said quietly. One that started several weeks ago, when I first saw your paintings and decided I needed to meet the artist who could capture light the way my Eleanor used to. And then he was gone, leaving Emily alone with questions that demanded answers and hope she was afraid to believe in. But as she lay there, feeling the IV drip life back into her veins, feeling the hospital work to pull her back from the edge, Emily let herself wonder, what if this was her second chance? What if surviving meant something more than just not dying? The monitor beeped steadily beside her. Outside her window, Savannah moved through its evening, and somewhere in the city, a stranger named William Donovan was keeping a promise to a wife who'd believed that love meant showing up, even for people you'd never met. Emily closed her eyes, and for the first time in months let herself hope. 3 weeks earlier, the October afternoon hung golden over Forsyth Park. That perfect autumn light that made Savannah look like something from a painting. Spanish moss swayed gently in the breeze, casting dancing shadows across the lawn where Emily had set up her table beneath the same oak tree she'd claimed as her spot for the past 6 months. Her paintings leaned against the trunk, each one a small window into the city she'd come to love. The cathedral at sunrise. Factor's walk in rain. The river at that magic hour when day hadn't quite surrendered to night. She'd poured herself into each piece, not just paint but hope. The desperate belief that beauty could somehow save her. A young couple strolled past, arms linked, barely glancing at her work. An older man slowed, studied a painting of Bonaventure Cemetery for a long moment, then moved on without a word. A woman with a designer purse paused to read the small sign Emily had propped on her table. Each painting is hope. I'm fighting AML. The woman's expression shifted to something Emily had learned to recognize. Pity mixed with discomfort, the look of someone who wanted to help but didn't know how, who felt guilty for having health and money, and a future that extended beyond the next medical bill. How much? The woman asked, pointing to a small canvas showing Jones Street at dawn. $80, Emily said, trying to keep her voice steady, trying not to sound desperate even though she was. The woman bit her lip. It's beautiful, really, I wasn't planning to spend that much today. I understand, I hope things get better for you, the woman said, already stepping away. I'll pray for you. Emily nodded and smiled, because that's what you did. You accepted prayers and good wishes and sympathy, even though none of those things paid for chemotherapy. None of those things stopped the cancer cells from multiplying in your bone marrow. The afternoon wore on. A businessman walked past without slowing. 2 college students paused to take photos of the fountain, completely ignoring Emily's setup. A family with young children gave her paintings a wide berth, as if illness might be contagious. Emily felt it then, that particular exhaustion that had nothing to do with the hours she'd been sitting there. It was deeper, bone deep, the kind of tired that sleep couldn't fix. She'd felt it growing stronger over the past 2 weeks, knew what it meant. The leukemia was winning. Those are quite lovely. Emily looked up. An older man stood there, maybe 70, with silver hair and suspenders over a plaid shirt. His face was weathered but kind, eyes that crinkled at the corners like he smiled often. Thank you, Emily said. You do all these yourself? Yes sir, every one. He studied them with genuine interest, bending slightly to see the details. You've got real talent, young lady. Real talent. He straightened, his gaze shifting to her sign. AML. That's leukemia, isn't it? Yes sir, acute myeloid leukemia. He nodded slowly. My sister had that. 30 years ago. She fought hard. Emily waited, knowing what usually came next. People wanted to share their cancer stories, needed to connect their loss to her fight. She won, the man said, surprising Emily. 67 years old now, lives in Charleston with about a dozen cats. He smiled. So don't you give up, you hear me? Something in Emily's chest loosened slightly. I won't. I'm Jameson. I own the building on Jones Street, the one with the blue door, number 42. That's my building, Emily said, realization dawning. You're my landlord. Guilty as charged, he chuckled. Thought you looked familiar, but I'm not as sharp as I used to be. You eaten today? The question caught Emily off guard. I had some crackers this morning. Mr. Jameson's expression shifted to something stern but caring. That's not eating. That's surviving. Look, I'm making a pot of gumbo tonight. Too much for one old man. You come by around 6, all right. And don't tell me you're not hungry, because I can see you're not eating properly. Mr. Jameson, I appreciate it, but no buts. 6 o'clock. I'll leave the door unlocked. He started to walk away, then turned back. And Emily, those paintings are worth more than $80. Don't sell yourself short just because you need money. Beauty has value, and your work is beautiful. He left before Emily could argue, his slow gait carrying him across the park toward the historic district. Emily sat there, feeling that warmth that kindness always brought, that painful recognition that people could be good even when the world felt dark. She'd been in Savannah for 2 years, and Mr. Jameson was the first person who treated her like more than just the sick girl selling paintings in the park. The sun continued its descent, shadows growing longer, the golden light deepening to amber. A few more people passed. No one bought anything. Around 5 o'clock, an older man in an expensive polo shirt stopped. He had that look of comfortable wealth, the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money. He glanced at her paintings with barely concealed disdain. His eyes lingered on her sign, and his mouth twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Art won't pay the bills, sweetheart," he said, his tone casual but cutting. "You'd be better off getting a real job, maybe something in an office, something with health insurance." Emily felt the words hit like physical blows. "This is my job," she said quietly. "Is it though?" He gestured at her empty tip jar, at the paintings that hadn't sold. "Looks to me like you're playing artist while real life passes you by. Maybe it's time to grow up, face reality." He walked away, leaving Emily sitting there with his words echoing in her head. The worst part was that he wasn't entirely wrong. She was barely making enough to survive, let alone pay for treatment. The paintings weren't selling. Reality was crushing her under its weight. Emily began packing up, her hands trembling slightly. As she folded the table, a cough rose in her throat. She grabbed a tissue, pressing it to her mouth, and when she pulled it away, there were small flecks of blood. She stared at the tissue, her heart pounding. Blood. That was new. Or rather, it was new again, a return of the symptom that had first sent her to the doctor 2 years ago. The leukemia was getting worse. Much worse. Emily crumpled the tissue quickly, shoving it deep in her pocket where no one could see. She couldn't think about what it meant. Not yet. Not here, in the middle of Forsyth Park with tourists laughing and children playing, and the world moving on as if her personal catastrophe wasn't unfolding one cell at a time. She finished packing, slinging her canvas bag over her shoulder. The weight of it made her legs tremble. Everything made her tremble lately. Walking back to her apartment took twice as long as usual. She had to stop 3 times to catch her breath, to let the dizziness pass. By the time she climbed the stairs to her door, she was shaking with exhaustion. Inside, the medical bills sat on her counter where she'd left them. Reminders. Threats. Numbers so large they'd stopped feeling real. Emily set down her bag and walked to the bathroom. In the mirror, a stranger stared back. Pale skin, dark circles under her eyes, cheekbones too prominent. She looked sick, she looked like someone who was losing. But at 6 o'clock, she made herself walk down the hall to Mr. Jameson's apartment, because he'd invited her, because kindness deserved acknowledgement, because giving up meant dying, and she wasn't ready for that yet. Mr. Jameson's gumbo was thick and spicy, full of shrimp and andouille sausage, the kind of food that tasted like home, even if you'd never been to Louisiana. Emily managed 3 bites before her stomach rebelled, but she stayed anyway, listening to Mr. Jameson talk about Savannah in the old days, about his late wife who'd loved to garden, about the neighborhood cats he fed, even though he claimed not to like them. "You're going to be okay, girl," he said as Emily was leaving. "I can tell, you've got fight in you. That counts for something." Emily wanted to believe him. She walked back to her apartment, climbed into bed, and pulled out her phone. She scrolled through her photos, looking at pictures from before. Before the diagnosis, before the treatments, before her life had narrowed to this desperate fight for survival. There she was at art school, laughing with friends, covered in paint, gloriously unaware of what was coming. There she was with her family in Vermont, her father healthy enough to smile, her mother not yet worn down by worry. Emily had been happy once, she'd had a future full of possibility. Now she had medical bills and bloody tissues and paintings no one wanted to buy. She set the phone aside, and closed her eyes, too exhausted even to cry. Tomorrow she'd go to the park again. Tomorrow she'd try again, because what else could she do? Outside her window, Savannah settled into evening. The city lights flickered on, casting that warm glow she'd tried so many times to capture on canvas. Beautiful and indifferent, the world kept spinning. And Emily Carter, 28 years old with acute myeloid leukemia and $700 in her bank account, fell into restless sleep, her dreams haunted by numbers she couldn't pay and futures she couldn't reach. The examination room at the Savannah Cancer Center was exactly the same as Emily remembered from 6 months ago. Same uncomfortable chair, same anatomical posters on the wall, same fluorescent lights that made everyone look vaguely ill. "Doctor." Patel entered with a tablet, and a carefully neutral expression that Emily had learned to read. Bad news came dressed in professional calm. Your blood work from last week came back, Dr. Patel said, settling onto her rolling stool. She didn't open the tablet. Didn't need to. She'd already memorized what she needed to say. The blast count in your bone marrow is significantly elevated. The AML has relapsed. Emily had known this was coming, had felt it in her body for weeks, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way that symptoms couldn't. How bad? Emily asked. Bad enough that we need to start treatment immediately. The regimen I'm recommending is more aggressive than what you had before. High-dose chemotherapy, possibly followed by a stem cell transplant if we can find a donor match. And the cost? Dr. Patel hesitated, and that hesitation told Emily everything. With your current insurance situation, you're looking at substantial out-of-pocket expenses. The chemotherapy alone will be between $40,000 and $60,000. If we proceed to transplant, we're talking $200,000, possibly more. The numbers didn't even process. They were too large, too impossible. Emily made $11 an hour at the cafe before she'd gotten too sick to work. She sold paintings for $80 when she was lucky. The math didn't work. It had never worked. What happens if I don't do the treatment? Emily asked quietly. Emily, I need to know. Dr. Patel's jaw tightened. 6 months at best, probably less. The disease is aggressive and progressing rapidly. Emily nodded, as if this was reasonable information, as if they were discussing something minor. And with treatment? A good chance of remission. You responded well to treatment before. You're young, relatively healthy aside from the leukemia. But we need to start soon. Within 2 weeks ideally. I understand. Thank you for being honest with me. Dr. Patel reached out, her hand resting briefly on Emily's knee. Let me connect you with our financial counselor. There are programs, assistance options, payment plans. We'll find a way to make this work. But Emily had heard those promises before. Programs that didn't cover enough. Payment plans that still required thousands up front. Assistance that required proof of poverty, so complete it felt like stripping away the last shreds of dignity. In the parking lot, Emily sat in her car for 20 minutes before she could make herself drive. Her phone sat in her lap, her mother's number pulled up on the screen. She should call, should tell them. They deserved to know. But every time she tried to press the button, she thought about her mother's voice, the way it would crack with worry. Thought about her father, who was having a good month right now, whose PTSD was manageable for the first time in years. Thought about how her illness had already taken so much from them the first time. She called anyway. Emmy? Her mother answered on the second ring, voice bright with surprise. Honey, this is a nice surprise. How are you? Emily closed her eyes, fighting to keep her voice steady. Hi Mom, I'm good. Just wanted to hear your voice. Oh, that's sweet. There was a rustling sound, like her mother was settling into a chair. Your timing's perfect. I just got home from the Hendersons' place. Took me 4 hours to clean that mansion. I swear rich people make the biggest messes. How's Dad? A pause. The kind that said things weren't great but could be worse. He's okay. Had a rough night last night, but this morning he was out in the garage working on that old Chevy. Keeping busy helps. And Danny? Your brother's good. He got promoted at the hardware store. Assistant manager now, can you believe it? Seems like just yesterday he was in diapers. Her mother laughed, that warm sound Emily remembered from childhood. So what about you, baby? How's the art going? Emily looked at the Savannah Cancer Center building, at the people going in and out, all carrying their own private catastrophes. It's going well, Emily lied. I sold 3 paintings this week. Savannah's beautiful this time of year, Mom. The light is perfect for painting. I'm so proud of you, Emmy. After everything you went through, everything you beat, you're out there living your dream. That takes courage. Guilt twisted in Emily's chest, sharp and hot. Thanks, Mom. You sound tired, honey. Are you taking care of yourself? Eating properly? I'm fine, just been working a lot. Trying to paint as much as I can while the weather's good. Well, don't overdo it. You remember what the doctor said about taking care of yourself? Emily remembered. She remembered all of it. The warnings, the guidelines, the careful management required to keep leukemia at bay. She'd followed every rule, done everything right, and it hadn't mattered. The cancer had come back anyway. "I'll be careful," Emily promised. "Listen, I should let you go. I know you must be tired from work. Never too tired to talk to my daughter. Emmy, I love you. You know that, right?" "I love you too, Mom." After she hung up, Emily sat in the parking lot and let herself cry. Not the dramatic sobbing of someone who expected comfort, just quiet tears that ran down her face while the world moved around her. She'd lied to her mother, had looked at the woman who'd given everything for her and lied because the truth was too heavy to share, because her family couldn't help, could barely keep themselves afloat, and knowing about the relapse would destroy them almost as much as her death would. A memory surfaced, sharp and painful. She was 19, newly diagnosed, sitting in a different hospital room in Vermont. Her mother had slept in a chair beside her bed every night for 3 weeks. Her father had picked up extra shifts despite his anxiety, working himself into exhaustion to help pay bills. Danny had dropped out of college to work full-time. They'd given everything for her once. Emily couldn't ask them to do it again. She drove back to her apartment in a daze, not really seeing the streets, operating on autopilot. Inside, she pulled out an old shoebox from the back of her closet. Photos from art school, acceptance letters, scholarship notifications. She'd had a full scholarship to the Savannah College of Art and Design. 4 years, everything paid for, a future bright with possibility. Then the diagnosis came during her sophomore year, and she'd withdrawn to focus on treatment. By the time she was in remission, the scholarship was gone, her spot given to someone else, her dreams deferred indefinitely. "I'll go back," she'd told herself. "When I'm healthy, when I have money saved, when things are better." Things had never gotten better. Emily set the box aside and walked to her easel. A half-finished painting sat there, a view of River Street she'd been working on for 2 weeks. The colors were right, the composition strong, but something was missing. Some essential truth she couldn't quite capture. She picked up her brush, intending to work, but her hand was shaking too badly. The exhaustion that had been building all day crashed over her like a wave. She set the brush down and simply stood there, staring at the unfinished painting. "I can't do this," she whispered to the empty room. "I can't." But she would. She had to. Because the alternative was giving up, and Emily Carter wasn't ready to disappear yet. That evening, she returned to Forsyth Park, not to sell paintings, just to sit. The park at twilight was different, quieter, locals walking dogs and joggers cooling down. The tourist crowds thinned. Emily sat on a bench near the fountain, watching the water catch the last of the day's light. Somewhere in this city, people were living normal lives, going to work, making dinner, planning futures that extended beyond 6 months. She wasn't one of those people anymore. Maybe she never had been. A dog bounded up to her, a golden retriever with a wagging tail and joyful eyes. Emily scratched behind his ears, and the simple pleasure of it made her chest ache. "Sorry about that." A woman jogged up, maybe 40, wearing running clothes. "Max, come here, leave the nice lady alone." "It's okay," Emily said. "I don't mind." The woman clipped a leash to Max's collar. "He loves everyone, thinks the whole world's his friend." She smiled, started to leave, then paused. "Are you all right? You look like you might need someone to talk to." Emily almost laughed at the absurdity of it. A stranger could see her pain so clearly, but she couldn't share the truth with her own mother. "I'm fine," Emily said. "Just thinking. Well, whatever you're going through, I hope it gets better." The woman gave a little wave and continued on, Max pulling her toward new adventures. Emily sat until the park emptied, until the streetlights flickered on, until sitting any longer would mean admitting she had nowhere else to be. Then she walked home slowly, each step requiring deliberate effort, and climbed the stairs to her apartment one at a time, gripping the railing, refusing to give in to the exhaustion pulling at her bones. Inside, the medical bills waited, the half-finished painting waited. Tomorrow waited, demanding she face it with strength she didn't have. Emily fell into bed fully clothed, too tired even to change, and let darkness claim her. In her dreams she was healthy again, painting in bright studios, laughing with friends, existing in a world where her body didn't betray her. When she woke, reality was still there, unchanged and unforgiving. And Emily had no choice but to keep fighting anyway. Grace Holloway sat in her car outside Forsyth Park, her laptop open on the passenger seat, cursor blinking on a blank document. She'd been sitting there for 20 minutes, trying to find inspiration for her next column, finding only the same emptiness that had been following her for months. Stories that matter, her editor kept saying. Find me something real, Grace. Something that makes people feel. Grace didn't know how to write about feeling anymore. She'd spent 23 years in a marriage that had slowly, quietly died, and when it finally ended 6 months ago, she'd felt nothing. Not grief, not relief, just a hollow space where a life used to be. She was 52 years old, successfully divorced, professionally accomplished, and completely lost. Through the windshield, she watched people move through the park, a young mother pushing a stroller, an elderly couple walking hand in hand, college students sprawled on blankets, laptops open, pretending to study. Normal people living normal lives, all of them certain of their place in the world. Then Grace saw her. A young woman sat beneath an oak tree, surrounded by paintings, working in a sketchbook with complete focus. Even from a distance there was something about her that caught Grace's attention. Something in the way she held herself, determined but fragile, like she was fighting to stay upright. Grace grabbed her bag and got out of the car, drawn by instinct she'd learned to trust after decades of journalism. As she got closer, the paintings came into focus. They were stunning. Not technically perfect, but alive with emotion. Each one captured Savannah, in a way that felt intimate, like the artist had painted her deepest feelings, and they'd somehow manifested as city streets and rivers and light. These are beautiful, Grace said, and meant it. The young woman looked up, startled. Up close she was even younger than Grace had thought, maybe late 20s, with dark hair pulled back, and eyes that held too much knowledge of pain. Thank you, the woman said. Grace studied the paintings more carefully. There was something haunting about them, a quality that suggested the artist knew time was precious. How long have you been painting? Since I was 12. Seriously, maybe 8 years. Grace's eyes caught on the small sign propped against the table. Each painting is hope. I'm fighting AML. The pieces clicked together. The quality of the work. The intensity of emotion. The way the artist painted light like someone who understood it, might not always be there. May I? Grace gestured to the empty chair beside the table. Sure. Grace settled into the chair, studying the young woman more carefully. I'm Grace Holloway, Emily Carter. I'm a writer, Grace said. I do a column for Southern Living. Human interest stories mostly. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I'd like to hear your story, if you're willing to share it. Emily's expression shifted, walls coming up. I'm not looking for pity. I'm not offering it, Grace said simply. But I see someone creating beauty in the middle of something difficult, and that interests me. Not because of the difficulty, but because of the beauty. Emily was quiet for a moment, her fingers drumming against her sketchbook. What would you want to know? Everything. Or nothing. Whatever you're comfortable sharing. Tell me about your art. Tell me why you paint these particular scenes. Tell me what Savannah means to you. Grace smiled gently. The illness is part of your story, but it's not the whole story. I want to know about Emily the artist, not just Emily the patient. Something in Emily's expression softened. Most people just want to know about the cancer. I'm not most people. They talked for over an hour. Grace asked questions that had nothing to do with illness, questions that treated Emily as a whole person rather than a tragedy. What inspired her? What did she see when she looked at Savannah? Why light? Why these particular moments? Emily answered slowly at first, then with growing warmth. She talked about how light could transform ordinary things into something transcendent, how the same street looked completely different at dawn versus dusk. How painting made her feel connected to the world, even when her body was betraying her. After my first diagnosis, Emily said, everything felt fragile, like I'd been walking through life thinking it was solid ground, and suddenly I realized it was ice and I could fall through at any moment. Painting was the only thing that felt real, like I could capture these moments and they'd exist even after I was gone. Grace scribbled notes, her journalist's instincts firing for the first time in months. This was it. This was the story she'd been looking for. Not because it was sad, but because it was true. Because Emily's resilience said something about what it meant to be human, to create in the face of destruction, to insist on beauty when everything said it didn't matter. "Would you let me write about you?" Grace asked. "Your art, your story. Not as some tragedy piece, but as a real profile of an artist who's doing something remarkable." Emily hesitated, fear flickering across her face. "I don't know if people would care. I think people are desperate for stories like yours," Grace said honestly. "Stories about real people fighting real battles and refusing to give up. The world needs beauty, Emily, and it needs people like you who are brave enough to make it." "I'm not brave," Emily said softly. "I'm terrified every single day." "Being scared doesn't mean you're not brave. It means the opposite." Grace pulled out her business card, pressed it into Emily's hand. "Think about it. No pressure, but I believe your story matters. I believe your art matters, and I'd be honored to help share it." Emily looked at the card, her fingers trembling slightly. "What if it doesn't help? What if people read it and nothing changes?" "Then at least they'll know you exist," Grace said. "At least they'll have seen your work. That's worth something, isn't it?" Emily nodded slowly. "Okay, you can write about me." Grace felt something shift in her chest, a warmth she hadn't experienced in months. Purpose. Connection. The feeling that what she was doing mattered. They exchanged contact information, made plans for a longer interview. As Grace was leaving, Emily called out, "Grace, why does this matter to you? You could write about anyone." Grace turned back, considering the question. "Because I've spent the last 6 months feeling like my life was over, like losing my marriage meant I'd lost myself, and then I see you facing something infinitely harder, and you're still creating. Still fighting, still insisting that beauty matters." She smiled, feeling tears prick her eyes. "You're teaching me how to live again. That's why it matters." Emily's eyes went bright with emotion. "Thank you for seeing me. Not just the illness, me. That's the only version of you I'm interested in," Grace said. She walked back to her car feeling lighter than she had in months. Her laptop was still open on the passenger seat, cursor still blinking. But now she knew what to write. She spent the rest of the afternoon in a coffee shop, words flowing faster than they had in years. She wrote about Emily's talent, about the way she captured light, about her determination to keep creating, despite impossible odds. She wrote about resilience and beauty and the human capacity to find meaning in suffering. By evening she had a draft. By midnight it was polished. She sent it to her editor with a note. "This is the real thing. This is a story that matters." 2 days later her editor called. "Grace, this is beautiful. I'm running it in next week's online edition, maybe in print the following month." "Great work." Grace immediately called Emily. "The article's running next week. I'm sending you the draft now. If there's anything you want changed, anything that feels wrong, tell me." Emily was quiet for a long moment after Grace sent the file. "Then you made me sound like an artist first and a patient second." "That's because you are an artist first," Grace said. "Everything else is just context." "Thank you," Emily whispered, "for understanding, for caring. Thank you for trusting me with your story." After they hung up, Grace sat in her living room, the divorce papers finally filed away in a drawer where they couldn't haunt her. Her marriage was over. That part of her life was finished, but maybe that was okay. Maybe endings made space for new beginnings, new connections, new purposes. She thought about Emily painting beneath that oak tree, refusing to surrender to illness or despair. Grace wasn't fighting cancer, but she was fighting something. Fighting the emptiness that came from losing your sense of self. Fighting the temptation to give up on living just because life looked different than you'd planned. Emily was teaching her that survival meant more than just not dying. It meant insisting on beauty, on creation, on connection with other humans who were also struggling to figure out how to keep going. Grace picked up her phone and texted Emily, "Whatever happens, you're not alone in this fight. I've got your back." 3 dots appeared. "Then that means more than you know." Grace smiled, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not the naive kind that expected everything to work out perfectly, but the stubborn kind that insisted on showing up anyway. She didn't know if her article would help Emily pay for treatment. Probably not. The world didn't work that way, didn't deliver neat solutions to impossible problems. But at least Emily would be seen. At least people would know about her talent, her courage, her refusal to let illness steal her identity, and sometimes being seen was the first step toward survival. The article went live on Southern Living's website at 8 in the morning on a Tuesday. By noon it had been shared 3,000 times. Emily didn't see it at first. She was at Forsyth Park, setting up her table, moving slowly because the exhaustion had gotten worse over the past week. Grace had warned her the article was coming, but Emily hadn't expected much. A few people might read it. Maybe someone would buy a painting. She didn't expect her phone to start buzzing non-stop. Messages from old friends she hadn't spoken to in years, comments on social media, emails to the contact address Grace had included in the article. Everyone had something to say, and Emily's phone couldn't keep up. By 1 o'clock, people started showing up at the park. An older woman approached, maybe 70, with white hair and warm brown eyes. "Are you Emily, the painter from the article?" Emily nodded, suddenly self-conscious. "My husband and I read about you this morning," the woman said. "Your work is extraordinary. We'd like to buy this one, the one with the church at sunset." Emily's hands shook as she took the woman's money. $80. The woman didn't even try to negotiate, didn't give that look that said she was only buying out of pity. "Keep painting," the woman said, squeezing Emily's hand. "The world needs your art." Then another person came. And another. A man in his 60s bought the painting of the river at dawn. A couple in their 40s chose a piece showing Factor's walk after rain. Each time someone handed Emily money, she felt a strange mixture of gratitude and disbelief. This was working. Grace's article was actually working. By 3 o'clock, Emily had sold 6 paintings. 6, more than she'd sold in the previous month combined. But it wasn't just sales. People wanted to talk. A woman named Margaret stopped, reading the article on her phone, then looking at Emily with tears in her eyes. "My daughter had leukemia when she was 16. She's 25 now, healthy, in medical school. Don't give up. Treatment works. You can beat this." A man named Robert, maybe 50, bought a small canvas and said, "I lost my brother to AML 5 years ago. Seeing your work, seeing you still creating, it helps. It reminds me that he fought too, that his fight mattered." Each conversation left Emily feeling seen in a way she'd never experienced. These people weren't treating her like a victim or a charity case. They were treating her like an artist whose work had value, whose story had meaning. But not everyone who came was kind. Around 4 o'clock, a man in expensive clothes stopped at her table. He was maybe 50, with the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money. He read the article on his phone, then looked at Emily with obvious skepticism. "How do we know you're really sick?" he asked bluntly. Emily felt like she'd been slapped. "Excuse me, I'm just saying, it's convenient." Young artist, sad story, people buying paintings out of guilt. He gestured at the growing crowd. "There's a lot of scams online these days. People faking cancer to get money." Heat flooded Emily's face. "I'm not faking. That's what someone faking would say." He shrugged. "I'm just being realistic. If you're really sick, where's your proof?" A woman nearby turned on him. "That's a disgusting thing to say. She doesn't owe you proof of anything." "I'm entitled to my opinion," the man said. "Then keep it to yourself," another person chimed in. The man walked away, but the damage was done. Emily felt exposed, judged, suddenly aware of everyone looking at her. Were they all wondering the same thing? Were they all questioning whether she was telling the truth? Grace showed up an hour later, carrying bottles of water and a sandwich. "I've been watching the metrics. The article's been shared over 5,000 times. This is incredible, Emily. Someone accused me of faking," Emily said quietly. "Said I was running a scam." Grace's expression hardened. "One person out of thousands. Don't let one cynic take away what's happening here. But what if more people think that? What if this backfires? Then we deal with it," Grace said firmly. "But Emily, look around you. Look at all the people who believe in you, who are connecting with your work. That's real. That matters more than one asshole's opinion." Emily wanted to believe her. She counted the money in her tip jar. At the end of the day, $420. It was more than she'd made in weeks. It was nowhere near enough for treatment. That evening, back in her apartment, Emily sat at her kitchen table surrounded by congratulatory messages on her phone and medical bills on the counter. The contrast was almost funny. Her phone said she was inspiring, brave, talented. The bills said she was behind on payments, at risk of collections, running out of time. $420 felt like finding a Band-Aid when you were bleeding out. Better than nothing, yes, but still not enough to survive. Her phone rang. An unknown number. Hello? Hi, is this Emily Carter, the artist? A woman's voice, chipper and professional. Yes, that's me. Great. My name is Melissa, and I run a social media management company. I saw your story online, and I think we could really help you monetize your situation. Build your brand, increase your reach, maybe set up a Patreon or GoFundMe. We take a 20% commission, but I think we could really maximize your earning potential. Emily's stomach turned. Monetize my situation. Your story, I mean. The cancer journey. People love that kind of content. We could do weekly updates, behind the scenes at treatment, really engage your audience emotionally. I'm not interested in that, Emily said. Are you sure? I really think we could. Emily hung up. The phone rang again 2 minutes later. Someone else with a similar pitch. Then another call. Then emails started flooding in, all offering to help her for a percentage of whatever she made. She turned her phone off and sat in the silence of her apartment, feeling like she was drowning in attention that was somehow making her feel more alone. Mr. Jameson knocked on her door around 8. Saw the article. Grace did good work. She did, Emily agreed. But it's complicated now, isn't it? Mr. Jameson's eyes were knowing. All those people looking at you, having opinions about your life. I don't know how to handle this, Emily admitted. I thought attention would help, but it's just making everything harder. Mr. Jameson settled into her armchair with a grunt. Here's what I learned when my wife got sick. People mean well, but they don't know what to do with illness. Makes them uncomfortable. So they either treat you like a saint or like a fraud, because both of those are easier than seeing you as just a person dealing with something hard. What do? You keep being you, keep painting, keep showing up. The people who matter will stick around. The rest are just noise. After he left, Emily tried to sleep but couldn't. Her phone was still off, but she could feel it there on her nightstand, full of messages and opinions and expectations she didn't know how to meet. She got up and walked to her easel. The half-finished painting of River Street stared back at her, still missing that essential element she couldn't capture. Emily picked up her brush and started working. The colors weren't right, and her hands were shaking, but she painted anyway. Because painting was the one thing that made sense, the one place where she could be just Emily. Not Emily the sick girl, or Emily the inspiration, or Emily the maybe scammer. Just Emily. Just an artist trying to capture light before it faded. She painted until 3 in the morning, until exhaustion finally pulled her back to bed. The painting was still unfinished, still imperfect, but it existed. Despite everything, it existed. And tomorrow she'd go back to the park and try again. Because that's what artists did. They showed up, they kept trying. They insisted on creating beauty, even when the world made it hard. Even when attention felt like drowning instead of saving. Even when hope cost more than you had to give. The video appeared 3 days after Grace's article went viral. Emily didn't even know someone had filmed it. She'd been at Forsyth Park, packing up for the evening, when the dizziness hit harder than usual. The world tilted sideways, her vision blurred, and she'd grabbed the edge of her table to keep from falling. Someone captured those 20 seconds on their phone. Emily swaying, clearly struggling, then steadying herself and continuing to pack up with a forced smile. The video was uploaded to TikTok with a caption that made Emily's blood run cold. This girl claims she has leukemia and needs money for treatment. Watch how fast she recovers when she thinks no one's looking. Scam artist. By the time Emily saw it the next morning, it had 200,000 views. The comments were brutal.
totally faking. My mom had cancer and couldn't even stand up. This is why I don't trust these sob story fundraisers anymore."
She's literally fine 5 seconds later. So obvious. Someone needs to report this. She's stealing from people who genuinely need help. But there were defenders too. People who'd read Grace's article or bought Emily's paintings fighting with strangers in the comments. The thread devolved into chaos. Accusations flying back and forth. Everyone claiming they knew the truth. Emily sat on her couch, her phone trembling in her hands, reading comment after comment until the words blurred together into a wall of judgment and anger. This was her nightmare come to life. Not the cancer killing her, but the world deciding she was lying about it, turning her fight for survival into entertainment and controversy. Her phone rang. "Grace, don't read the comments," Grace said immediately. "Too late. Emily, listen to me. This is internet nonsense. It doesn't change the truth of your situation. They think I'm a scammer," Emily said, her voice cracking. "Hundreds of thousands of people think I'm faking cancer to trick them. Some people think that. Most don't, but I know that doesn't make it hurt less." Emily's other hand buzzed with a notification. A local news station wanted to interview her. The message was careful and professional, but Emily could read between the lines. They wanted her on camera so they could analyze her appearance, so their audience could judge whether she looked sick enough. "I can't do this," Emily whispered. "I thought the attention would help, but it's destroying me." "Come to my place," Grace said. "Right now. Don't sit there alone reading that poison." An hour later, Emily sat in Grace's beautiful living room, a glass of wine in her hand that she couldn't bring herself to drink. Grace had pulled up the video, watching it with a journalist's critical eye. "It's taken out of context," Grace said. "Anyone who's been around illness knows that symptoms come and go, that you can be struggling 1 minute and manage the next, but people online don't want context. They want drama. There's a GoFundMe someone created in my name," Emily said numbly. "I didn't authorize it, but it's raised $6,000 that I'll never see because I don't control it. And now people are accusing me of running multiple scams. We can report that, get it taken down, and then people will say I shut it down because I got caught." Emily set down the wine glass. "There's no way to win this." Mr. Jameson arrived a few minutes later, having been called by Grace. He settled into an armchair with his characteristic grunt, studying Emily with those knowing eyes. "You look like hell, girl. Despite everything," Emily almost laughed. "Thanks, I mean it. You're letting these keyboard warriors get to you. People who've got nothing better to do than tear down strangers on the internet." "But what if they're right?" Emily asked. "What if I shouldn't have put myself out there? What if trying to sell paintings and tell my story was wrong?" "Why would it be wrong?" Mr. Jameson's voice was sharp. "You're an artist trying to survive. You're not begging for charity. You're not lying about who you are. You're selling your work and being honest about why you need the money. Nothing wrong with that. Then why does it feel so terrible?" "Because exposure hurts," Grace said gently. "Being seen by thousands of people means some of them will see you wrong, will project their own issues onto you. That's the price of visibility, and it's a high price. No one tells you that when they're encouraging you to share your story." Emily's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. More messages, more opinions, more people who'd never met her claiming they knew whether she was telling the truth. A woman had commented on the viral video, "I saw her in person. She's clearly sick. The people calling her a faker have no idea what they're talking about." Another response, "How do you know? Did you see her medical records? She could be acting." On and on it went, strangers debating the validity of her suffering like it was a game. "I want to quit," Emily said quietly. "I want to delete everything, disappear, go back to being invisible." "Is that what you really want?" Grace asked. Emily thought about it. The painting at her apartment still unfinished, the blank canvases waiting, the light on River Street she kept trying to capture, the moments of connection she'd felt with people who truly saw her work, who understood what she was trying to say. "No," she admitted, "but I don't know if I'm strong enough for this." "You don't have to be strong all the time," Mr. Jameson said. "You just have to keep going. 1 day, 1 hour, 1 minute if that's all you can manage." That night, alone in her apartment, Emily stood in front of her bathroom mirror. She looked sick, really sick. Her skin was pale, almost translucent. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her cheekbones protruded too sharply. This was what dying looked like. The thought hit her with sudden clarity. the dizziness, the exhaustion, the blood she'd coughed into tissues and hidden from everyone. Her body was failing and no amount of internet fame or painting sales was going to stop it. Emily sank to the bathroom floor, her back against the tub, and let herself feel the terror she'd been holding back for weeks. She was 28 years old and she was dying, and the world was arguing about whether she was faking it while her cells multiplied out of control, and her bone marrow failed, and time slipped away faster than she could paint. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and opened her photos. Pictures of herself from 2 years ago, during remission, smiling healthy, gloriously unaware of what was coming. She'd beaten it once. She'd thought that meant she was safe, but cancer didn't care about fairness or second chances. It came back when it wanted, took what it wanted, and left you fighting battles you couldn't win. Emily pressed her hand to her mouth, muffling the sobs that wanted to break free. She'd tried so hard, painted until her hands cramped, smiled at strangers, pretended hope was enough. But the truth was simple and terrible. She was losing. And the world's attention hadn't saved her. It had just given her an audience for her failure. Her phone buzzed with another notification. Another message from a stranger with an opinion about her life. Emily turned the phone off and sat in the quiet darkness of her bathroom, listening to her own ragged breathing, wondering how many more breaths she had left. Tomorrow she'd get up. Tomorrow she'd try again. But tonight, for the first time since her relapse, Emily let herself truly believe she might not survive this. And the thought was more terrifying than anything the internet could say. William Donovan stood on the balcony of his Tybee Island home, watching the Atlantic crash against the shore beneath a cloud-heavy sky. The house was too large for one person, all glass and expensive wood, every detail chosen by Eleanor with the careful eye of someone who understood how spaces could hold joy. Now it just held memories. William was 67, though most people guessed younger. He kept himself disciplined, running, eating carefully, sleeping little. His silver hair was still thick, his face lined but handsome in that weathered way that suggested a life lived fully. He wore his wealth quietly, expensive clothes that didn't announce themselves. People knew who he was. William Donovan, founder of Donovan Tech Solutions, the man who'd revolutionized supply chain software in the late 90s and sold the company for a fortune. He sat on boards, funded museums, gave quietly to causes that mattered. But what no one knew, what he carefully kept private, was that he'd stopped caring about any of it 3 years ago. Eleanor had died of pancreatic cancer, 6 months from diagnosis to grave, a brutal sprint toward an ending they both knew was coming. She'd fought with grace and fury, refusing to let the disease define her final months. The last month had been the hardest. Eleanor in a hospital bed in their home, the ocean visible through the windows she'd positioned specifically to capture that view. William beside her always, watching her fade helpless, despite all his money and connections, and desperate willingness to trade places with her. "Promise me something," she'd whispered 3 days before the end, her voice barely audible but her grip on his hand surprisingly strong. "Anything. Don't let grief make you small. Don't hide from life just because it hurts. Find someone who needs what you have to give and give it. Not just money, yourself, your time, your attention. Promise me, William." He'd promised, and he'd broken that promise every day since. William turned from the balcony and walked back inside. His assistant Marcus had left the day's mail on the kitchen counter. Charity solicitations mostly, invitations to galas he'd decline, the usual business correspondence that kept his wealth growing even though he barely paid attention anymore. Beneath the stack of mail sat a copy of Southern Living. Marcus subscribed to dozens of magazines, maintaining the fiction that William was still engaged with the world. He almost set it aside. Then something about the cover made him pause. He opened to the feature article, "Fighting for Art, Fighting for Life, a Savannah Painter's Story." The photograph showed a young woman with dark hair and exhausted eyes, sitting behind a table of paintings in Forsyth Park. William studied the paintings in the photo. They were good, more than good. There was something in the way she captured light, the way she painted that specific quality of Savannah's golden hour, that reminded him of Eleanor's work. He read the article slowly. Emily Carter, 28, acute myeloid leukemia, selling paintings to fund treatment.
Grace Holloway had written it with respect and skill, focusing on Emily's art rather than her illness, though the cancer was there, impossible to ignore. Something in William's chest cracked open, a feeling he hadn't experienced since Eleanor's death. Recognition, maybe, or the ghost of purpose. He looked at the photograph again. Emily didn't look like Eleanor. They shared no physical resemblance, but there was something in her eyes, that particular quality of determination layered over exhaustion, that brought Eleanor back so vividly William had to close the magazine and walk away. He spent the rest of the day trying not to think about it. Went for a run on the beach, answered emails, made investment decisions with his financial advisor. All the mechanical tasks of living that had nothing to do with actually being alive. But that evening, he pulled out the magazine again, studied Emily's paintings, read the article a second time, more carefully. 28 years old, fighting leukemia, selling $80 paintings when she needed hundreds of thousands for treatment. The math was impossible. Even if Grace's article helped, even if people bought her work, she'd never make enough. The problem was too big, the gap between need and possibility too vast. William could help. The money meant nothing to him, was just numbers in accounts he barely thought about. Writing a check large enough to cover her treatment would barely register in his finances. But would that actually help? Or would it just be another hollow gesture, another check written to keep the world at arm's length? Eleanor's voice echoed in his memory. Find someone who needs what you have, and give it. Not just money, yourself. William walked to his study, to the corner where Eleanor's paintings hung. She'd been talented, specialized in abstracts that somehow captured emotion in color and form. He'd kept every single one, couldn't bear to put them in storage or donate them even though seeing them hurt. Her final painting dominated the wall. An abstract in blues and golds, swirling together in a way that suggested both chaos and hope. She titled it, What Remains, had finished it 2 weeks before dying. I think I found her, William said to the empty room, to his dead wife's memory. The person you told me to find. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I have anything left to give, but maybe I should try. The painting offered no response, but William felt something shift inside him, some door he'd kept locked, cracking open. The next morning he did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He drove into Savannah with purpose. He parked near Forsyth Park and walked slowly through the historic district, really seeing it for the first time in years. The cast-iron balconies Eleanor had loved, the cobblestone streets they'd walked together. The way morning light turned everything golden. He found Emily's setup under an oak tree. She was arranging paintings on her table, moving with the careful deliberation of someone whose body demanded mindful action. She looked worse than in the photograph. Thinner, paler, moving like every action cost her. But when she stepped back to study a painting she just positioned, her expression held quiet satisfaction. An artist finding brief joy in her work despite everything. William watched from a distance, not sure if he could actually do this. What would he say? He was a stranger who'd read about her in a magazine. He had money, yes, but what she needed was more complicated than financial help. He almost turned away, almost retreated to his car, his empty house, his carefully maintained grief. Then Eleanor's voice, crystal clear in his memory, "Don't let grief make you small." William took a breath and walked toward Emily's table. She looked up as he approached, her expression carefully polite. "Good morning, please feel free to look around." William studied the paintings. They were even better in person, each one capturing something essential about Savannah that most people missed. "You're very talented," he said. "Thank you." He pointed to a painting of a narrow street at dusk, street lamps just beginning to glow. "What made you choose this scene?" Emily looked at the painting, her expression softening. "I was walking home one evening, and the light was just perfect. That moment right before full dark when everything feels suspended between day and night. You captured it beautifully." They talked for a few more minutes, carefully, both feeling out the boundaries of the conversation. William didn't mention the article, didn't ask about her illness, just talked about art, about light, about the way moments could be preserved on canvas. "I'd like to buy this one," William said finally. "The Street at Dusk, it's $200. William reached for his wallet, then paused. Not yet, he wasn't ready yet. "Actually, could I come back tomorrow? I want to think about where I'd put it." Emily looked confused but nodded. "I'm here most days." Good, I'll see you tomorrow then. William walked away before he could second-guess himself, before he could retreat back into the safety of distance. That evening, back in his study, William pulled out his phone and searched for Emily Carter's name. The viral video appeared, the one accusing her of faking her illness. He watched it, watched strangers in comments tear her apart, and felt anger rise in his chest, the first real emotion he'd felt in years beyond grief. This young woman was fighting for her life, and people were turning it into entertainment. He found Grace Holloway's article, read it again. Then he found the follow-up piece in the Savannah Morning News, with confirmation from Emily's doctor. Everything checked out. She was exactly who she said she was. William stood and walked to Eleanor's final painting. He touched the frame gently, remembering the day she'd finished it, how triumphant she'd been despite barely having strength to hold the brush. "I'm going to help her," William said to the empty room, to his wife's memory. "I don't know if I'm doing this right, I don't know if I have what it takes, but I'm going to try." That's what you wanted, isn't it? For me to try. The painting held no answers, but William felt for the first time since Eleanor's death, like he wasn't completely alone. He had a purpose, a reason to show up tomorrow, a person who needed exactly what he could give, and maybe, just maybe, helping Emily would help him remember how to be alive again. William returned to Forsyth Park the next afternoon, his heart beating faster than it had in years. The weather had turned cooler, November settling over Savannah with gentle insistence. Emily was there again, sketching in a notebook while she waited for customers. She looked up as he approached, recognition flickering across her face. "You came back," she said. "I did." William gestured to the painting he'd admired yesterday. "Still available?" "Yes." "Good." He paused, making a decision. "Would you mind if I sat for a minute? I'd like to ask you some questions about your work." Emily hesitated, that guarded expression he'd seen before, but then she nodded toward the empty chair. "Sure." William sat, folding his hands in his lap. For a moment neither spoke, just let the park move around them, tourists laughing, children playing, life continuing regardless of individual struggles. "May I ask you something personal?" William said finally. "You can tell me it's none of my business." "Okay. Why do you keep painting?" William asked, not the practical reasons. "I understand you need money for treatment, but why this specifically? Why put your art out here when you could be resting?" Emily was quiet for a long moment. "Then because if I stop, I disappear. Not physically, not right away, but the part of me that's Emily, not Emily the cancer patient, she disappears. And I'm not ready for that." William felt those words hit his chest like a fist. He understood that fear intimately. After Eleanor died, he'd stopped doing everything that had defined him, and piece by piece, William the person had disappeared. "I lost my wife 3 years ago," he heard himself say. "Pancreatic cancer." She was a painter too. She kept painting until 2 weeks before she died, could barely hold the brush. I didn't understand it then, why she'd push herself when she could be resting. But I think I understand now. "I'm sorry," Emily said softly. She was holding on to herself. William continued. "The same way you are." They sat in comfortable silence. Something in William's chest was loosening, a tightness he'd carried so long he'd stopped noticing it. "What was her name?" Emily asked. "Eleanor." "Eleanor Donovan." Emily's eyes widened. "Donovan, like Donovan Tech Solutions." William nodded. "So you're William Donovan, the philanthropist, among other things." Emily's expression shifted, pieces clicking together. "Why are you here?" "Because I read about you and saw something familiar. Someone fighting to hold on to themselves while losing everything. And I thought maybe I could help. Not because you need saving, but because I need to give. There's a difference." Before Emily could respond, the sky opened up. Rain that had been threatening all day finally came, sudden and heavy. "Help me pack up," Emily said, moving quickly. But as she stood, her legs buckled. William lunged forward, catching her before she hit the ground. "I'm okay," Emily tried to say, but she wasn't. Her eyes rolled back, her body going limp in his arms. "Emily," William lowered her gently to the ground, his hand supporting her head. "Emily, can you hear me?" She didn't respond. Her skin was clammy, her breathing shallow. William pulled out his phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. I need an ambulance at Forsyth Park. A young woman collapsed, unresponsive. Yes, I'll stay with her. Rain soaked through his clothes, through Emily's. William pulled off his jacket and covered her, then gathered her paintings, shoving them under the table to protect them from the downpour. The ambulance arrived in 8 minutes that felt like hours. Paramedics checked Emily's vitals, loaded her onto a stretcher. Are you family? One asked William. No, but I'm coming with you. At the hospital, everything moved with practiced urgency. Emily was rushed into an examination room. William stood in the hallway, soaked and useless, while nurses and doctors moved around him. Dr. Patel appeared after 20 minutes. Are you William Donovan? I am. Emily regained consciousness briefly and asked for you. She wanted me to explain her situation. Dr. Patel's expression was carefully professional. The leukemia is progressing aggressively. Her blood counts are critically low. Without immediate treatment, we're looking at days, not weeks. What does immediate treatment mean? Aggressive chemotherapy, possible stem cell transplant. But Mr. Donovan, I need to be frank with you. Emily has no insurance that covers this level of care. The costs will be substantial, upwards of $200,000, possibly more. And with treatment, a good chance of remission. She's young, responded well to treatment before. But she needs to start immediately. William pulled out his checkbook. He was one of the few people who still carried one. What's the hospital's billing department number? Dr. Patel's eyes widened. Mr. Donovan, I'm covering her treatment. All of it. Whatever she needs. William wrote quickly, his handwriting firm despite his shaking hands. He tore out the check, $250,000, and handed it to Dr. Patel. Is this enough to start? Dr. Patel stared at the check. This is, Mr. Donovan, this is extraordinary. It's help, William said simply. That's all. Can I see her? Emily's room was small, antiseptic, filled with beeping machines. She lay in the bed looking impossibly fragile, an IV dripping into her arm, monitors tracking her failing body. Her eyes opened when William entered. You stayed. Of course I stayed. You shouldn't have. I'm not your responsibility. William pulled a chair close to her bed. Emily, I spoke with Dr. Patel. I understand how serious this is. Tears slid down Emily's cheeks. I can't afford the treatment. I've been trying, selling paintings, but it's not enough. It's never going to be enough. William reached into his jacket, still damp from the rain, and pulled out the duplicate check he'd written. He held it out to her. Emily took it with trembling hands. Her eyes went wide when she saw the amount. I can't accept this, she whispered. You can and you will, William said gently. Emily, this money means nothing to me, but it means everything to you. It means life. Let me give you that. But why? You don't even know me. William thought about how to answer. About Eleanor, about promises, about 3 years of grief. But the simplest truth was the truest one. Because my wife told me not to let grief make me small, William said. Because you paint light the way she did, and that matters. Because I wasn't able to save her, but I can help save you. That has to mean something. Emily pressed the check to her chest, sobbing. William didn't try to comfort her with platitudes. He just sat there, present, refusing to look away.
This doesn't mean you owe me anything, William said when her crying subsided. No gratitude performances, no special paintings. This is a gift, not a transaction. The only thing I ask is that when you're well you help someone else the way I'm helping you. I will, Emily promised. I swear. Dr. Patel returned with paperwork. With William's check, treatment could start immediately. Plans were made, schedules arranged, hope cautiously offered. William stayed through it all, called Emily's mother in Vermont, explained gently that Emily was in the hospital but would be okay, contacted Grace Holloway who arrived within the hour, sat with Mr. Jameson in the waiting room while Emily underwent the first intensive treatment. You're a good man, Mr. Jameson said. I'm trying to be, William said. I spent 3 years forgetting how. As evening fell, Emily finally slept, sedated and fighting. William stood by her window looking out at Savannah, the city lights glittering in the darkness. Eleanor had been right. He'd let grief make him small, had hidden from the world because engaging hurt too much. But pain wasn't the problem. Numbness was. William pulled out his phone and looked at Eleanor's photo, taken a month before her diagnosis. She was laughing, eyes bright, fully alive. I'm trying, he whispered to the image. I don't know if I'm doing this right, but I'm trying. Behind him, Emily slept. The monitors beeped steadily. Life continued, fragile and precious. And William Donovan, for the first time in 3 years, felt like someone who had a reason to wake up tomorrow. The treatment was brutal. Emily had been through chemotherapy before, remembered the nausea and exhaustion, but this regimen was more aggressive, hitting harder, leaving no room to recover between rounds. The first week was agony. Emily spent most of it vomiting, her body shaking even when there was nothing left. The anti-nausea medication helped some, but not enough. She couldn't eat, could barely drink, existed in a fog of discomfort that made time meaningless. Grace visited every day, bringing things Emily couldn't use but appreciating anyway. Grace just sat there, sometimes reading aloud, sometimes just being present. Mr. Jameson came too, his visits brief but meaningful. He'd sit in the vinyl chair and tell stories about old Savannah, about his wife, about the art of living. Simple stories that required nothing from Emily but listening. William came twice that first week, staying only minutes each time. Emily could see it cost him something to be there, to watch someone else endure what Eleanor had, but he came anyway. By the second week, Emily's hair began falling out. She'd expected it, but it still felt like a violation. Clumps on her pillow circling the drain, coming away in her hands. A nurse named Patricia helped her shave what remained. Better to do it on your terms, Patricia said gently. Emily watched in the mirror as her hair disappeared, revealing the pale, fragile skull underneath. She looked sick now in a way that couldn't be hidden. I look like I'm dying, Emily said quietly. You look like you're fighting, Patricia corrected. There's a difference. That afternoon, a new roommate arrived. An elderly woman with skin like crumpled paper, wheeled in and positioned in the bed beside Emily's. This is Margaret, a nurse announced. Margaret, meet Emily. Call me Maggie, the woman said, her voice surprisingly strong. Only my dead husband called me Margaret. Over the next few days Emily learned Maggie's story. 78, battling her second round of breast cancer. Husband dead 6 years. Daughter in California. Former librarian, current badass who cursed like a sailor when nurses weren't listening. You're young, Maggie observed one morning. Too young for this nonsense. Cancer doesn't care about age, Emily said. No, it doesn't. Bastard disease. Maggie studied Emily. You married, kids? No. Good. Easier to fight when it's just you. Maggie grinned. If I beat this, I'm buying a motorcycle. Despite everything, Emily laughed. You're 78, exactly. What are they going to do, kill me? I've got cancer already. A man named Robert, maybe 60, being treated for lymphoma across the hall would stop by during his slow laps. He'd been a minister, still wore his collar sometimes. How are my favorite fighters? He'd ask. Tired of fighting, Maggie would respond. Can't we just surrender and go home? Where's the glory in that? Robert would counter, smiling gently. These moments became Emily's lifeline. The hospital could have been isolation. Instead it became community. People who understood without explanation, who could sit in comfortable silence or talk about anything except cancer. Dr. Patel checked Emily's progress regularly. The news was cautiously hopeful. Emily's blast count was dropping. Her body was responding. It was working. We're not out of the woods, Dr. Patel cautioned. But we're moving forward. Emily nodded, afraid to hope too much. William came again at the end of the second week. Emily was having a better day, had managed to eat half a sandwich. She was sketching in a notebook Grace had brought. You're drawing, William observed. Trying to. My hands shake, but it feels important to keep doing it. It's not terrible, William said, studying the sketch. A simple drawing of the view from her window. You're capturing something true. How are you doing? Emily asked. William was quiet. Better than I have in 3 years. Worse in some ways because being here brings back memories. But better because I'm not hiding anymore. I'm sorry this is hard for you. Don't be. This is where I need to be. He looked at her directly. When you're better, when you're out of here, I'd like to help you set up a proper studio. Not charity. Investment in an artist I believe in. Emily's eyes filled. William, think about it. You don't have to answer now. After he left, Maggie said,
That man is either a saint or secretly in love with you. He's grieving, Emily said. Can be both, Maggie observed. That night, Emily lay awake listening to hospital sounds. Maggie's snoring, monitor beeps, distant voices. She thought about William's words, about Eleanor's belief that beauty mattered. For the first time since her relapse, Emily let herself imagine a future beyond survival, creating art that mattered, maybe helping others. It felt dangerous to hope, but maybe hope was the point. Emily picked up her sketchbook and drew, simple lines capturing moonlight through her window. Nothing special, just proof she was still here, still creating, still refusing to disappear. 3 days later, a letter arrived, delivered by William's assistant, heavy cream paper in an expensive envelope. Emily opened it with shaking hands. Dear Emily, I've started this letter a dozen times, not sure what to say or if I have the right to say it. But Grace told me stories we don't tell have a way of haunting us, so I'm being brave. When Eleanor was diagnosed, we had 6 months from diagnosis to death. 6 months to say everything, do everything, pack a lifetime into half a year. It sounds like enough until you're living it. She handled it with more grace than I did. I wanted to fight, to try every treatment, to rage. She wanted to live, really live, not just exist in hospitals. She wanted to paint and laugh and watch sunsets. She won that argument. We had 3 good months where we lived more fully than we had in years. Then the last 3 were just endurance. The morning she died, barely conscious, she held my hand and whispered, "Don't let grief make you small. Find someone who needs what you have and give it. Not just money, yourself." Those were her last coherent words. I failed that promise for 3 years. I wrote checks but felt hollow. Then I saw your story. I saw someone fighting not just to survive, but to create beauty in suffering. Someone who reminded me what Eleanor meant, that living means more than not dying. Helping you isn't charity, it's me finally keeping my word. You're teaching me how to live again. You're showing me that beauty matters, that creation matters, that fighting for what you love even when it seems hopeless is the most important thing. Keep painting, Emily. Keep fighting. Keep showing the world that light exists in darkness. That's the greatest gift you could give me. With deep respect and affection. William. Emily read the letter twice, tears streaming. Maggie said nothing, just reached across the space between beds and squeezed Emily's hand. I can't be what he needs, Emily whispered. What if I don't make it? Then you'll have fought as hard as you could, Maggie said. That's all anyone can do. Emily folded the letter carefully. I want to paint something for him, something that honors Eleanor. Then paint it, Maggie said. But paint it for yourself first. Over the next week, Emily began planning. A series of paintings about second chances, about surviving, about finding beauty in wreckage. She'd call it second chances. Grace visited and loved the idea. We could do a small exhibition when you're stronger. Emily nodded, feeling something she hadn't felt in months. Not just hope, but purpose. Her life mattered beyond her own survival. Her art could touch people, help them carry their own grief and hope. She was still sick, still fighting, but for the first time since the relapse, Emily felt like she might actually win. And whether she did or not, she was going to create something beautiful in the trying. 3 months later, on a clear Saturday in early March, Emily stood in a small gallery on River Street, surrounded by people and paintings and possibility. The Second Chances exhibition had come together piece by piece. Grace had found the gallery, William had handled costs, Mr. Jameson had hung the paintings with steady hands. Emily had painted 12 pieces, working slowly through months of treatment and recovery. Each one captured a different aspect of her journey: loneliness, kindness of strangers, light transforming darkness, beauty persisting through suffering. The centerpiece was a painting of an oak tree, massive and ancient, Spanish moss draped like curtains. Light streamed through branches at that magic hour, between day and night. At the tree's base a figure sat, just a suggestion of a woman holding something that could have been a paintbrush or light itself. Emily had titled it What Remains, the same as Eleanor's final painting. William had loaned it back for the exhibition, insisting it needed to be seen. Emily's hair had grown back, short and dark, curling against her skull. She was still thin, still tired easily, but the latest scans showed complete remission. Dr. Patel had used the word cured, with cautious optimism. The gallery filled steadily. People who'd bought Emily's paintings in the park came greeting her warmly. Patricia from the hospital arrived with colleagues. Maggie appeared in a wheelchair, cursing about stairs. "If I'm buying a motorcycle," Maggie announced, "I'm buying one of your paintings first." Robert the minister came with his wife, both healthy and hopeful. He'd finished treatment a month before Emily. Grace moved through the crowd, making introductions, ensuring everyone felt welcome. She'd written a beautiful piece for Southern Living framing this not as a cancer story, but an art story about creation and community. William stood quietly in a corner, watching everything with an expression Emily had learned to recognize. Content, maybe even happy. Emily made her way over. "Thank you for this, for everything. You did this," William corrected. "I just helped clear the path. I couldn't have without you, without everyone." Emily gestured at the room full of people who'd become her community. "That's the point," William said. "We're not supposed to do hard things alone." A young woman approached, maybe 22, thin and wearing a scarf. Emily recognized the look immediately. Another fighter. "Excuse me, are you Emily Carter?" "I am. I read about you. I was just diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma last month. I'm terrified, but seeing your paintings, seeing you here, it makes me feel like maybe I can do this too." Emily took the woman's hand. "What's your name?" "Sarah." "Sarah, I won't lie. It's hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, but you can do it, and you don't have to do it alone." Sarah's eyes filled. "Could I maybe get your number, to talk sometimes when it gets bad?" "Of course." Emily pulled out her phone and they exchanged information. As Sarah walked away, William said quietly, "You're paying it forward already." "Trying to," Emily said. The afternoon wore on. People bought paintings not out of pity, but because the work was good, because it spoke truth. By sunset, 8 of 12 pieces had sold. Grace appeared with a woman in an elegant suit. "Emily, this is Dr. Chen, from the Telfair Museum." Dr. Chen shook Emily's hand. "I've been studying your work. You have a distinctive voice. I'd like to discuss a larger exhibition at the Telfair, perhaps this fall." Emily felt the ground shift. The Telfair was a major museum. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll consider it," Dr. Chen said. "We'll talk next week." After she left, Emily turned to William. "Did you?" "I mentioned you," William admitted. "But Dr. Chen makes her own decisions. This is about your talent, Emily." As evening settled, the crowd thinned. Mr. Jameson came over, pulling Emily into an unexpected hug. "Proud of you, girl." When only Grace and William remained, Emily looked at the paintings still hanging. Her work, her story, proof she'd fought and survived and created beauty. "What happens now?" Emily asked. "Now you keep living," Grace said. "Keep painting, keep showing up. And when I'm scared, when I think about relapse, then you call us," William said. "You let people who love you remind you why you're fighting." They walked out together into the March evening. The river reflected lights from buildings, creating patterns that shifted with each ripple. Emily stopped at the railing. The water, the light, the way Savannah glowed, it made her want to paint. "I need to tell you both something," Emily said. "I want to start a program for artists dealing with illness who can't afford treatment. Use money from selling paintings to help them." "William, you said to pay it forward." "I want to do that in a real way." "That's wonderful," Grace said. "I could help with organization," William offered. "Make it sustainable, small and personal," Emily said. "One artist at a time." They stood watching the river, 3 people who'd found each other in crisis and created something like family. "Thank you," Emily said, "for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." "Thank you," William echoed, "for reminding me life is worth living even when it hurts." Grace squeezed Emily's hand, saying nothing, because sometimes presence was enough. Emily pulled out her portable easel, the one she still carried. She set it up by the river and began painting, capturing lights on water, beauty in simple moments. "What are you doing?" Grace asked. "Painting," Emily said. "That's what I do." She worked quickly, capturing dancing reflections, beauty that existed in moments. People passed behind her, some watching, some moving on. It didn't matter. She was painting because she was alive, because she could. because creating beauty in darkness was its own resistance. When she finished, the small canvas glowed, not perfect, just honest. That's lovely, William said. Just practice, Emily said, but she was smiling. They walked together through the historic district, past squares and old houses and churches that had stood for centuries. Savannah at night was different, softer, edges blurred by darkness and streetlights. At Emily's building, they paused. "See you tomorrow," Grace asked. "Definitely." William hesitated. "Emily, helping you has changed my life. I'm not who I was 6 months ago. I'm better, closer to who Eleanor wanted me to be." "You were always that person," Emily said. "You just forgot for a while." Inside her apartment, Emily set the small painting on her dresser. It would dry by morning. She walked to her window and looked out over Jones Street. The oak trees stood silhouetted against night sky, branches reaching like prayers. Somewhere in the city, other people were fighting battles. Some would win, some wouldn't. All deserved to be seen. Emily picked up her sketchbook and began drawing, not planning a painting, just drawing because it felt good. She drew until her hand cramped and eyes grew heavy. Then she climbed into bed, city sounds filtering through her window. Tomorrow she'd wake and face whatever came. Paint, laugh, probably cry, visit Sarah and remind her survival was possible, have coffee with Grace, thank William again. She would live, not just exist, but actually live, fully, messily, imperfectly. That was the real second chance, not just more time, but wisdom to use it well, to create beauty, to show up for people who needed it, to refuse to let fear make you smaller than you were meant to be. Emily closed her eyes, her last thought simple: tomorrow I'll paint something beautiful, and she would. Tomorrow and the day after, for as many days as she was given. Each canvas a small defiance, quiet insistence that light mattered, that beauty mattered, that life, complicated and painful and precious, was worth fighting for. Emily Carter fell asleep smiling, hands still paint-stained, heart full of hope, earned the hard way, by refusing to give up, by accepting help, by remembering that even in darkness there was always light, if you knew where to look. And she did. She knew exactly where. In connection between people who cared. In creation. In simple stubborn insistence on continuing to exist, to fight, to make beautiful things in a world that desperately needed beauty. That was her second chance. And she wasn't going to waste it.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.